In reality, communism is a tyranny planned by power seekers whose most effective weapon is the big lie. And if one takes all the lies of communism and boils them down, you will find they distill into two major lies out of which all others spring. They are, communism is inevitable. You know, that isn't on the back of all our minds. Is we don't know how to take care of ourselves. Communism, a world state where I'm just told what to do, it's inevitable. I don't know what to do with myself. I need to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, communism is a movement of the downtrodden masses rising up against exploiting bosses. Yes, these are both lies. Well, I don't know. It does seem kind of inevitable. But it is a lie that communism is poor people that are rising up and they want to make a new government that's fair.
Yeah,
it's just government's corrupt. Okay, so it's a lie. Let us go back to our imaginary survey and analyze our first big lie of communism, that it is inevitable. You'll recall that we asked our interviewee if he was for or against communism, and then we asked him to define it. Now we're going to ask him, sir, do you think communism is inevitable in America? And in almost every case, the response will be something like this. Oh, well, no, I don't think so. You know how Americans are. We are a little slow sometimes in reacting to danger. You remember Pearl Harbor, but the American people would never sit still for communism. Next we ask, well then, do you think socialism is inevitable in America? The answer in almost every case will be similar to this. I'm no socialist, you understand, but I see what is going on in this country. Yeah, I'd have to say that socialism is a bit inevitable. Then we ask our interviewee, since you say that you are not a socialist, but you feel the country is being socialized, why don't you do something about it? His response will run, I'm only one person. Besides, it's inevitable. You can't fight City Hall. Heh 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 heh. Don't you know the boys down at City Hall are doing everything they can to convince you of that? How effectively can you oppose anything if you feel your opposition is futile? Giving your opponent the idea that defending himself is futile is as old as warfare itself. In about 500 BC, the Chinese warlord philosopher Sun Tzu stated, supreme excellence in warfare lies in destruction of your enemy's will to resist in advance of perceptible hostilities. We call it Psy-war, or psychological warfare today. In poker, it is called running a good bluff. The principle is the same. Thus we have the American people, anti-communist but unable to define it, and anti-socialist but thinking it is inevitable. How did Marx view communism? How important is the inevitability of communism to the communists? What do the communists want you to believe is inevitable? Communism or socialism, if you study Marx' Communist Manifesto, you will find that, in essence, Marx said the proletarian revolution would establish the socialist dictatorship of the proletariat. To achieve the socialist dictatorship of the proletariat, three things would have to be accomplished. One, the elimination of all right to private property. Two, the dissolution of the family unit. And three, destruction of what Marx referred to as the opiate of the people, religion. Marx went on to state that when the dictatorship of the proletariat had accomplished these three things throughout the world, and after some undetermined length of time, as you can imagine, he was very vague on this point, the all-powerful state would miraculously wither away and state socialism would give way to communism. You wouldn't need any government at all. Everything would be peace, sweetness, and light, and everybody would live happily ever after. But first, all communists must work to establish socialism. Now, do you see kind of the philosophy behind it? Oh, he's just saying this is what Marx believed about socialism. Is that you have to first take this complete control of the people and force them to be fair. And once they're fair, you won't need a government anymore, so it'll just kind of wither away.
Yeah.
And that's just fantasy.
Yeah.
Can't you just see Karl Marx really believing that an omnipotent state would wither away? Or can you imagine that Joseph Stalin or any other man with the cunning and ruthlessness necessary to rise to the top of the heap in an all-powerful dictatorship would voluntarily dismantle the power he had built by fear and terror?
Read this more.
And there's an asterisk, and it says, Karl Marx was hired by a mysterious group who called themselves the League of Just Men, to write the Communist Manifesto as the demagogic boob bait to appeal to the mob. In actual fact, the Communist Manifesto was in circulation for many years before Marx's name was widely enough recognized to establish his authorship for this revolutionary handbook. All Karl Marx really did was to update and codify the very same revolutionary plans and principles set down 70 years earlier by Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Order of the Illuminati in Bavaria, and it is widely acknowledged by serious scholars of this subject that the League of Just Men was simply an extension of the Illuminati, which was forced to go deep underground after it was exposed by a raid conducted by the Bavarian authorities.
In 1786, damn.
Yeah.
So it almost got busted up then, but then they just got back together and changed their name.
They never almost gets busted up.
Yeah.
That's
one person, like...
But what he's saying is, from the very beginning, just the very philosophy of communism or socialism, that you need to have a powerful state that forces the people to be social and fair, and then you won't need the state anymore. It's just... no sane person believes that that's possible on a mass scale. But that's a whole other argument. So that's what communism is, just part of the philosophy and the appeal of it. Okay. Socialism would be the bait, the excuse to establish the dictatorship. Since dictatorship is hard to sell in idealistic terms, the idea had to be added that the dictatorship was just a temporary necessity and would soon dissolve of its own accord. You really have to be naive to swallow that, but millions do. It's the same thing with the Homeland Security right now. A few terrorist attacks that they caused, and they clamped down this huge TSA grid on us, and they're just like, we've got to keep everybody safe for a while. But they did it fast, man, in a decade. Which I guess, I don't know, I guess it's happened in other countries quicker than that. The drive to establish socialism, not communism, is at the core of everything the communists and insiders do. Marx and all of his successors in the communist movement have ordered their followers to work on building socialism. If you go to hear an official communist speaker, he never mentions communism. He will speak only of the struggle to complete the socialization of America. If you go to a communist bookstore, you will find that all of their literature pushes this theme. It does not call for the establishment of communism, but socialism, which is the same thing. And many members of the establishment push this same thing. The September 1970 issue of New York Magazine contains an article by Harvard professor John Kenneth Galbraith, himself a professed socialist, entitled "Richard Nixon and the Great Socialist Revival," in describing what he calls the Nixon game plan. Galbraith states, Mr. Nixon is probably not a great reader of Marx, but his advisors, Drs. Burns, Schultz, McCracken, are excellent scholars who know him well and could have brought the president abreast, and it is beyond denying that the crisis that aided the rush into socialism was engineered by the administration. Dr. Galbraith began his article by stating, certainly the least predicted development under the Nixon administration was this great new thrust to socialism. One encounters people who still aren't aware of it. Others must be rubbing their eyes, for certainly the portent seemed all to the contrary. As the opponent of socialism, Mr. Nixon seemed steadfast. Galbraith then proceeds to list the giant steps towards socialism taken by the Nixon administration. The conclusion one draws from the article is that socialism, whether it be from the Democrat or Republican parties, is inevitable. Fellow Harvard socialist Dr. Arthur Schlesinger said much the same thing. The chief liberal gains in the past generally remain on the statute books when the conservatives recover power. Liberalism grows constantly more liberal, and by the same token, conservatism grows constantly less conservative. Many extreme patriotic individuals have innocently fallen for the conspiracy's line. Walter Trohan, columnist emeritus for the Chicago Tribune, and one of America's outstanding political commentators, has accurately noted. It is a known fact that the policies of the government today, whether Republican or Democratic, are closer to the 1932 platform of the Communist Party than they are to either of their own party platforms. In that critical year, more than 100 years ago, in 1848 to be exact, Karl Marx promulgated his program for the socialized state in the Communist Manifesto. And Mr. Trohan has also been led to believe that the trend is inevitable.